Looks like I can see some people here already. Let me know if you can hear me okay, and hear this okay as well. Just let me know in the chat box. Always got to do some housekeeping just before we get started. Hello, Jello. That's cool. Loud and clear. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Now, Arziankak. Arzian. Mitch. Loud and clear. All right. Good. Tell me if you can hear this. You should be. Now don't leave the stream just because you're listening to a clicking metronome. I won't drive you insane with it. Turn that off for a sec. Don't need it on all the time. Excuse me. Yes, 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 and yes. And just for fun, I did a little switcheroo internally here at the studio. Just let me know if you can still see me, because I'm going to bounce back and forth between two different programs. So if you can still see me right now, awesome. Just let me know. I got to flip back here. Good video, good sound. Everything is seen. Awesome. Thank you. I got this. What was the legend of that? Who was the rocker that invented the devil horns for rock and roll? Really, really short guy. I think he may have passed away. But I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at my lack of recollection of it. Because I should know. But okay, so that's good. So I put a question up there for everyone who comes in. Please chime in. Let me know where you're hailing from. Some of you I know, because you've been around me for a long time. Some of you I don't, but I'd like to know something about you. So just tell me where you're coming in from, and welcome to the channel. I very much appreciate it. Aussie, was it Aussie? Maybe it was. Something tells me, where did I see this? On some metal documentary. This guy, Alice Cooper, swears he invented this, but this other guy, a famous singer from a heavy metal band, but he's short and long-haired. Gosh, I can't remember his name. I can see his face. He says his grandmother used to put this on people to give them the curse. Maybe it was in Italy, in the home country, in the old country. And then it got turned into that for, rock and roll stuff. So learn through the school of hard knocks. Okay, I can appreciate that. Mitch is in Cole Harbor. Awesome. Not far away, my brother. Tony, of course, yes, from the UK. I know what are you, 3 or 4 hours ahead of me now? Is it 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock where you are, Tony? And Todd's in. Todd's a very old friend of mine. He's not very old, it's just we go together back quite a way. Most of our lives, pretty much. Rodney James Dio, thank you. Yes, that was the person. That guy claims above everybody else, but I think he's passed away now. He invented that because he took it from his grandmother. Google told me. Darn Google. My mother-in-law flippantly says when, a question comes up when we visit and nobody knows the answer. She just rolls her eyes back, of course, and goes, just Google it. And, sometimes it's good to not have the answer and then to ponder on it for a day or two and let that brain do its job. I participated in oh yeah, now I remember. Yeah, Mitch. I remember the name. I'm trying to put the face to it. I'm sure I could eventually. It's 9 o'clock. Okay, so you're 4 hours ahead of me. Bedtime for Tony coming up. All right, are we set? We are set. Let's get this show on the road. I'm going to flip over here a little bit. And again, just let me know that everything is unchanged where you're looking. Everything sounds good. And we're hopping to go. Okay, folks, welcome again. Back to it. I'm calling these now the COVID sessions. And I don't mean to make fun of it in case any of you have people around you that have been affected by this pandemic. But it was my thinking that during this time when everyone is home and probably often on the internet, that I might as well take advantage of that time to hang out with you and share some sessions on different aspects of learning guitar. Excuse me. And so far, of course, what we have focused on is moving between, putting licks in between chords. That's something that a lot of people always ask me about, how people think about it. So that was one. And today, I keep forgetting there's people in different time zones. Today is about, we're going to explore a little bit about rhythm and timing and how it relates to strumming. Those of you that have studied with me long term probably will be very familiar with what I have to say, but it can't hurt to reiterate what I'm going to say. Mike, yeah, that's right, Mike, you're from Boston. Love Boston. It's a big Halifax. I've been there several times. Actually went down to visit Berklee School of Music. Hung out there with the classical guitar teacher for the day and sat in on his master class with some students and played a little bit. That was fun. That was a couple years ago now. But you have the Boston Common and we have the Public Gardens, and we just have a smaller version, man, of what you guys have there. We don't have the trains, but you're a much bigger city, of course. So so this is where I've already had a light bulb after listening to you. Well, don't burn yourself on the light bulb, Tony. I'm glad there's been some insight. By the way, when that happens, I'm glad that it does, because as you probably know by now, I tend to talk at length about helping you understand certain concepts, and sometimes I feel like I've overdone the talking. But once in a while, I do get those nice compliments for people that say, yeah, maybe you overdid the talking, but I think it was necessary in order to get the point across. So I'm glad that happened. Yeah, so today we want to hit rhythm, but Before we dig into that, and I don't know if Sheila's here, yesterday she said she tried to chime in and her comments weren't seen in the chat and she didn't show up in the chat. So I wonder what's going on there. But hopefully she can at least watch. But she left me a question via email, if I could address that a little bit just before we get started, and I'm happy to do so. Stephen Dempster, Dempster Guitar Studio. Forgot to say that at the front end, got carried away with the chit-chat. So here's Sheila's question, and it's regarding what we've been doing so far. She wondered if there's some guidance or strategy that I could talk about that helps you get from a chord into the lick that you want to play and then out of the chord again in time. So I think what she's referencing here is stuff like this. I'm going to go back to my other screen here. Is stuff like this. So let's say, I'll just do my regular progression. Let's say I'm doing this as my chord progression. Sorry. Then I want to leave that chord and go and do something licky, and then come back and do the whole thing again. So here's the chord ringing. Right there. Coming out of the chord into the lick and then back into the chord. So there's a couple of perspectives there that I can comment on. One of them is, you can consider them two different activities, obviously, and for sure, both of those activities are going to have to feel rock solid. Before the rhythm and the timing of it can have an opportunity to settle into your bones. So I often recommend to people when they're first starting a new technical training based on some concept, putting licks in between chords, that you not worry about the rhythm right away. You will soon enough. You have to, otherwise no one's going to listen to you. If your rhythm is solid, people think you can play. If your rhythm is not solid, they don't think you can play. It's just the way it is. So two things have to be solid. Obviously, the chord progression that you're playing has to be easily manageable by your by your fretting hand. You can't be fussing about where your fingers need to go, because all those little tiny motions are eating up precious time. If you want the chord, you make the chord. You make it, and you make it. You don't build it as you're playing it. That's a whole other topic I could definitely get into, perhaps on Monday. And I call this one-finger-itis. People building their chords one finger at a time. It's not your fault. It's how the pictures got shown to you when you were showing them. They said, put your first finger here, put your second finger there, and your third finger. And you did that, and you were a good person. And then you went home, and you kept doing that, and you kept doing it. And then maybe months later, even years later, you're still doing it. You're just in the habit of putting fingers down. That has to be gone. That's what I mean when I say the chord, just play it, or just form it. There's no more, how do I piece it together? So that's point one. Point two, same idea for the lick. You have to have either before or while that last chord is ringing. If you're in an improvised environment, you have to mentally plan ahead while the chord progression is being played where you'd like to go to pull off your lick. It's like you're watching one video with one eye, so to speak, and you're watching another one with another eye. Don't let anybody ever tell you that playing music is a basket course. It's a tremendous challenge. So for example, if I play this, and while that's ringing, my brain has in fact already planned, I want to go there and do something. Because I know you knew ahead of time that there was a musical relationship between what you could do here. Maybe it was the minor pentatonic you were thinking about. Maybe it was the major scale you were thinking about. Could be any number of things. But you have it in your mind that that's where you want to go. And it's a fleeting thought. It's not something you dwell on. It just flickers in and, okay, there's where I'm going. And that flickering in comes from experience. This is me again saying you got to get into that sandbox and you've got to push the sand around under your terms. You've got to learn to play around with these ideas. It's a very different experience than just playing other people's music where you're told what to do all the time because you want to sound like that song, so you mimic all the techniques that are required to do it. In a sense, you don't have to think. You just have to technically manipulate things. Here, you do have to think. So my advice is always separate the two out and make sure that your ability to make the chords of the progression are rock solid. Nothing wrong with my hand's ability to pull it off. That's the goal anyway. Same idea with the lick, that where you're going to play the lick, you have to be clear before you leave the chord where you're going to go. And, in a practice sense, if you have to go to the same place all the time for a month because you're not sure how to do all this, then that's what you do. That's how you start. And you'll get comfortable with that, and then you can go to another location to throw in a lick in between the same chords, should you want to. I think genuinely, and this is my honest opinion, people leave the training of a concept far too soon, convincing themselves that somehow it's enough that you're just kind of familiar with it. Familiar with anything doesn't get you very far. It just means you've been exposed to it, essentially. You have to go in to that sandbox and get some mastery of it. That's often the difference between those of us that go on in music, if they want to pursue it, or to get really good at any craft, and those of us that stay a little bit behind, is that person or that group of people are willing to put in a sense, whatever it takes, even at a recreational level, forget being professional about it, to say, I'm good at that technique. I'm good at making chords as a guitar player. I'm good at making licks in between chords as a guitar player. I've studied that a lot. And I've made room for it in my practice to make sure I touch on it as much as I practice. So that's the second point. So both have to be good. The third point is kind of a summary of the two. In classical guitar, when we were training and you're working, fingerstyle kind of stuff, the notion was as you take a small piece of the music and you work out the fingering of the right hand if you're plucking this way, and the fingering of the left hand, and you're just kind of choreographing where everything needs to go. You get that under control, and then you start putting some rhythm to it, as notated in the music. But you only do it for maybe one or two measures, probably no more than that. That's a weird thing for a lot of people to think about. Like, you only want me to strum for a measure or two? Potentially, yeah. If you can't strum it well right now, why do you keep strumming through the whole thing? You're spreading your effort too thin. So you take a chunk of it, a very small chunk, and you, quote unquote, you master that chunk before you move anywhere else. So in a sense, point 3 is that you have to have those chords mastered, and you have to have one or two areas that you know you're going to go to for your lick material, and have that solid as well. Not to worry about rhythm right away, but eventually, yeah, we'll have to zero in on rhythm, because there is a time issue involved in this. And this connects to what we're going to talk about today. So it was a very good question. So I hope that helps a bit. It's how I would approach it, but I like doing that. So I'm weird that way. I like taking small bits, getting really good at them, and then maybe over the course of a month or two, I've knitted all those small bits together, and I can play the thing. I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a rush. Okay. So I left, I'm going to flip over here for a sec. I want to check the chat box. I had some experience and you guys been playing bar chords. Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. Good question. Are you playing a C major instead of a C? And I'm not playing either. Tony asked me, am I playing a C major 7? I was playing C here, and I went up to here for a split second. That's F. And then I played G to F. See, I guess I'm tricking you a bit. I'm not intending to do it. That looks like a C because you see my third finger down here on that note. Holy crap, have we got a lot of stuff we can talk about. Here's the F you're used to seeing, sitting on the 4th string. I don't play that F very often. I move that finger to the 5th string, and I put my pinky where my 3rd finger was. That gives me a fuller sounding F. And of course you can bar to get all 6 strings. With this one I get 5 strings. This is just a nice, easier on the hand, instead of all the stress of that, a way of getting an F. So C, F, C, I'm just making this up now, G, F, G. I don't know if you've ever played that one. You probably only think in terms of that. And then I'm muting out the lower string. Okay, so that's what was happening there. Mitch, is it similar for walk up and down between chords? Mitch, what do you mean by walk up and walk down between chords? Because there are some songs, for example, that might do stuff like this. Right? So people often refer to those little bassy notes in between as walk up and walk down. Same idea, same principle. The only difference might be that with what we've been doing, often we were playing some chords in one location and then we jumped often to another location to get the sound that we wanted. We weren't necessarily hanging out around where the chords are. You can certainly do that, but you don't have to do it. And if you feel like you have to do it, and there's no other choice, then you've limited the possibilities for yourself. So, hope that helped. Picking notes between chords. Yeah. So, you could do this. This is a little bit having to do with rhythm, so this is not all unrelated. Everything's connected, folks. I've told you this many times before. So don't feel like I'm taking a ton of time up on the questions here. We will have some Q&A at the end, as I always do. So let's see. I could do this, right? That's fine. But I could also, with a different rhythm and the same set of chords, I could go... So I could go... I could do stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be limited to where I am in the chords, although it's a very pleasant way to get from one chord to the next. That might be a stepping stone toward leaving the chord and going and wailing on a lick and then getting back to it. It could be a little way to get that idea moving forward and getting the timing of it all fixed up. So, why, oh why can't I do that? What is it you're referring to, Tony? Let me know. I can tell you this, even without getting more specific. Don't answer it. Erase what you're typing in right now. I can tell you what the answer is. I say the same thing to people that I watch. Now, well, I do it less now, because here's the thing. I know if I wanted to do it, I can do it. Now, having said that, I'm looking at the chat, so I should be looking up at the camera here, but having said that, here's the trick. Once you've said to yourself, I want to be able to do A or B technique, that's great. You've established that's what you want to do. But the hard part is coming. You know this, right? The hard part is sitting down, maybe having to come up with some exercises on your own to do that type of technique, which can be hard to do, or hunting for some from someone else who's been doing it, or watching someone else via a video or something. It could be any number of ways, but you have to find a resource that you're going to now work on diligently to get you closer to the thing you want to do. Because there's often, and I'm not picking on Tony here, this is a generic thing that I experience in studio. There's a big gap between what people say they want and how much they're willing to work toward it. And the gap is big because they fill their brains with notions of, oh, I'm bored now. I've been playing this thing for 2 weeks. I'm getting bored. What do you do if you're bored? It's got nothing to do with what you're working on, my friend. Never will. It has everything to do with how you're reacting to what you're working on. That you can change. You cannot change, really, the essence of what you're working on. It is what it is. There's nothing you can change in it. If that's the technique you want to learn, that's how you're going to get to it by going through this exercise. You can't change it because then it's a different exercise for a different technique. So if that's what you're looking for, you've got to do it. And somehow or another, you've got to put the sense of I'm bored out of your thinking. Somehow you're going to have to find a way to not go there. Now, clearly, people do it. They find ways. There's lots of fine guitarists out there, and I can assure you they've all experienced the same thing. But they got past it, and so can you. So this idea of this is what I want, but this is what I'm willing to do to get it, rather than this is what I'm willing to do to get it, that's the big issue right there. Now, I'm not a psychologist by any stretch, so, I'm just going on my own experience because I understand what that means, that boredom. But as soon as I start feeling that, I just simply ask, well, why is that happening? It's probably happening because what you're doing at that instant is you're physically repeating something, but your mind is not really engaged with it. Like you've lost touch with it. So your mind wanders somewhere else. You're thinking about supper or going out for the night to do something, whatever. And you're disengaged from the value of the exercise. Once you're disengaged from it, the best thing you can do is put the darn guitar down and walk away. But make sure you come back again that same day to the exercise. And if all you can manage to do is spend 5 minutes on it, do 5 minutes. Don't stay there for a half an hour or an hour thinking I've got to really push this through, but I'm really bored. You're not going to get anywhere. Your learning curve is getting lower and flatter, and if anything, you're teaching yourself that this is all just drudgery. It isn't. So my suggestion would be work on it until that moment hits, and when you feel that moment, put the guitar down. Do not give that moment any more power. Put the guitar down, go away, live the rest of your life for a couple more hours. Somehow in the day, come back. That's my suggestion. Okay. I want to try something. Okay, well, first, what I want to do is I left a question at the top of the chat. Not everybody has given me a good answer yet. How did you learn rhythm when learning guitar? I would like to see some specific activity that you were presented with that helped you learn about rhythm when you decided to learn a musical instrument. Okay, and in the meantime, what I would like to try to do is I'm going to push the mic like a little closer here because I want you to hear some music. Now, YouTube is real funny, as you know. When it comes to teaching, even if I played the smallest fragment of a well-known copyrighted tune, I get a flag on my channel, copyright claim. It's done with robots and stuff. They just have such power over it. There doesn't seem to be much leeway with regards to how that information is being used. In other words, I'm just using it for teaching purposes. I'm demonstrating something using a familiar tune. Maybe it is to help somebody learn it, or maybe it's to help them learn a concept. But either way, right now anyway, YouTube, Facebook, all the social platforms don't seem to be very good at letting us teachers present that material without it severely affecting the channel that we work so hard to build up, thanks to you guys helping me do that. So I have to play some of my own stuff. Now, this has happened once before, though. I've done this once before, and get this, I got a copyright claim on my own music. This music's not even out anywhere. It's not on iTunes. It's not on Spotify. I haven't put it on anything. So I don't know if there's something wrong with the algorithm, but I got sent a copyright claim on my own music. So I'm going to try this. I want you to listen to something. I'm just going to pick a tune out. Let me know if you can hear it when I play it, okay? I'll just test it with one song for now.
Please just leave me behind. Now grounded into place, my teeth begin to grind.
Does that come through okay? Let me know. If it doesn't, then I'm just going to make some stuff up on my own. If it does, I'm going to use that one of the songs on the album as an example. Tony says it's okay. Mitch, heard, okay. All right, so let me try this. Let me go and pick a tune. I'm going to randomly pick one from the album. The album's the name of our band, Kingsmere. And we put it together a while back, and I haven't finished up the cover art for the CD, if anybody knows what a CD is these days. And so I just want to pick a tune out here. Give me 1 sec. Okay, I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to pull the mic close to you guys so you can hear it. And all I want you to do is obviously enjoy it a little bit. I won't play the whole thing. But I want to play it long enough so that you can tune into that aspect of the song that makes you kind of go like that. Maybe you're just tapping the table along to the song. It doesn't matter. As long as it's got some effect that you're perceiving that is persistent, predictable, etc., etc. As if you were listening just at a concert. And I know the sound quality will not be really, really good. So just take a listen. Okay, that's probably enough. Now, here's my question. When you're hearing that song, or any song that you're listening to for that matter, are you doing that? That's the question. Are you doing something like, as the music plays, are you just rocking your body back and forth? Or are you, in some cases, you could be, at a rock concert and really clapping the hands or doing the fist pumps. Like, where are they coming from? Sometimes the band does it, I know, and it gets the crowd going, but often they're not doing it. Where do the people in the audience perceive that they can all do that together? It's fascinating to watch. Not that I've personally experienced it with any of my music, but, I'm a teacher, I'm not a performer. So the issue is, do you pay attention to that quality of any piece of music that you listen to? Let me know in the chat box, because this is step number 1 when it comes to understanding rhythm and timing. But it's such a subtle thing, and it's a thing that's so often taken for granted, that it just bypasses people. That when it comes to learning rhythm and developing good timing, that's not necessarily what they're focused on. They think there's some other magical technical thing they should be doing to refine their skill set, but it starts here. The key is that it's repeatable, and it's predictable, and for the vast majority of music, it will not change from start to finish of the song. More elaborate types of music, this shifts all over the place just because you can. But for the most part, the standard radio mix, Q104 if you're in the Maritimes here, and stuff like that. Don't sue me, Q104, for saying it. If anything, I've just given you some more people. That quality, I call it the pulse. Most people will call it the beat. Now, I'm not going to get into why I make that distinction, but I do not call it the beat. And, well, I'll tell you this. If I said to you, there's the beat, now I want you to play half the beat. Doesn't make any sense, because there's no half of that moment where you're saying that's the beat. I know what you're referring to when you say it, but you can't split that in half. What you can do is recognize that each moment that happens is a pulse, and the space between those pulses. This is really critical, and this is going to help you understand how I approach teaching rhythm. The space between these pulses, the musical time between them can be chopped up into different parts. You can go halfway, you can go a quarter of the way, you can go an eighth of a way. If you cannot mentally perceive that as music unfolds, then you're already at a disadvantage. If you've never been exposed to thinking about this in how you've learned, I know some of you have put some answers in there, how to listen to music this way, you're already at a disadvantage. Now, if you were fortunate enough to learn to read music, all of this is built into the notation of it. So therein lies one of the biggest values of at least getting some exposure to reading written rhythm. I'm going to show you a cool example shortly. But you don't need to be able to read music to read rhythmic notation. But anything you can do rhythmically, whatever, can all be written out. So we have a code for that. If you have deep trouble hearing or feeling some of the things that I'm just talking about now, when you listen to a piece of music, then you may need to have aspects of it visually drawn out for you. So there's always two camps of people. There are some people that sit down, if I play a strum pattern for them that I just make up, for reasons I have no understanding why, they can mimic it back to me. Doesn't matter if they're playing the right chord. It's not of interest. They can move their hand and get the general gist of it just by having heard it and watched it. Other people, they're just lost. And maybe what they need is something written. So, the big picture here is this. I'm going to give you a quick example of how rhythm was taught to me, which was of tremendous value. There's two phases I went through. The first one was this. I'm gonna switch screens here. Put a book up. Not fancy. There it is. Rhythm guitar. Mr. Harry Jackson. He was my first guitar teacher. And look at the price of it. It's always backwards here. Look at that. $2.50. This is volume 2. And I've had it for a long time. I'm 57 now. I started this when I was about 12. Yes, I still have all that stuff. But here's what it was. And I was with him for 5 years. Every lesson we had, which was never a one-on-one lesson, by the way, it was always in a group setting. I don't know why. I was just a kid. He would write out a whole bunch of chords. Look how good I was at it. Oh, my goodness. I'm just showing off now. He would write out a series of chords in, different keys, just like we were talking about. And then he would highlight on the other side of the book specific rhythms. You can see right there. There's one. And there's another. And then you'd have to read the rhythm going across and play those chords. Like you put a chord in for each measure that you saw there. You don't need to know the details, but the point is you get used to reading this. Now, why is that of value? And I know a lot of people haven't experienced this. The value of that was that I got exposed to playing rhythms that, had I been only left to my own devices, I probably would never have experienced. So for some people, the visual writing of it, and of course demonstrating what the writing sounds like, that has to happen, helps them to get that rhythm inside of them. Otherwise, it wouldn't have occurred to them to play that way. And these are not strum patterns. These are not everyday strum patterns for songs. These are rhythmic exercises developed to grow your rhythmic muscles, to give you exposure in notation about, as an instruction, how to move your hand and then put some music to it just by changing some chords. I mean, you don't even need the chords. You can just hit the strings. Doesn't sound nice, but you could hit the strings. If you did that for 5 years, I'm not asking, it didn't take 5 years. I was only there, once a week. It didn't take me 5 years. If you added it all up, it was probably the equivalent of a year's worth of effort. There's some more rhythm. Look how crazy it can get. And this is nothing. Okay, so some people need this to help them get a better sense of rhythm and timing, because left to their own devices, they have trouble incorporating elements that they hear. Okay. Then, of course, at the other end of the spectrum, there are people who, like I said, as soon as you show them a strum pattern, assuming they can play a few chords okay, they seem to be able to pull it off just based on hearing it. And that's okay too. You have the two, we'll call it two extremes on the continuum. The vast majority of people who take up the guitar exist in the middle. Now, it doesn't mean the vast majority of people don't know how to listen and then strum, or don't want to learn to read and then strum. They can still use all of that information. But I'm just trying to give you a realistic sense of, on a spectrum, where things might lie. Most people that I experience usually need something visual to help them organize what I'm trying to get them to feel. Now, that was a long way of saying, just listen to the music, because there's hints within the music that tell you what to do. Mike says, moving with the music. Yeah, moving my feet. I'll be more aware now. As you say, you have to feel the music and come out. You have to feel the pulse. This is the trick. Tony's giving me a cry. I think he can't feel the pulse. This is what's missing with tabs. You're so right. I'm so glad you put that in. I will not take more than 1 minute, but I'm going to bash on tabs. There's a great quote. There's another guy on the web. I think his website is called Fretboard Anatomy. He's not in there often, like building it up a lot, but what he has there is very poignant. And I'm not using the right words, but there was one thing he said, or he had written, and he said, whatever it is about tablature, or tabs, that got you to where you are right now, that same system will not take you to where you want to go. So it means it has severe limitations. And for the most part, the severest limitation is it's just a graphical picture of where to put your fingers, with no musical awareness of how the sounds those fingers are going to make relate to one another. And I'm going to get to this relationship, trust me. You asked, I'm answering. So, I don't tend to use tablature very much in my teaching. I do it, but when I do it, I will actually add rhythmic notation to my tablature, which is often missing. And so as all of you probably know when you see it, you have a line of tablature at the bottom and then a line of written music at the top, and the two things go together. But most guitarists don't look at that top line. They see dots and they get scared because they didn't learn to read music. Okay, that's okay. But you should know a little bit about how to interpret the rhythm from the written side of things. But if you don't know that, that's still okay. We can still access it. When you heard that song, it's a pretty song, wasn't it? I was hoping, and it sounds like much of this is what you guys are doing. You were either tapping your foot to the tune or you were swinging your body. But let's say you weren't to that song, because you know it was a quiet one, you weren't doing this. I hope you weren't anyway. What you're probably doing is just gently, quietly reacting to what you're perceiving as the pulse. And the fact that you can do that, number one, means that if you can do that, and you know humans are wired to do it, you can understand rhythm. And the best thing that you need to understand about rhythm is that I'm watching myself do the duck dance there with a delay. Looks pretty funny. The one thing you need to know about rhythm is that it doesn't happen just because you're holding a musical instrument. Rhythm has to be felt in your body first. The first thing you need to feel on your road to learning to feel rhythm is that pulse. That innocuous thing that just about everybody does. Some people might do it twice as fast as you're doing it or twice as slow. That's okay for now. The fact that it's repetitive, the fact that it's predictable, the fact that it is perceivable among all the sounds that are happening in a song is the sign that you have full and complete rhythmic capability. It's just not been presented to you. And I think a few of you had said that you have had no discussion about rhythm when you took up the guitar. I'm going to just look through here again. Yeah, that might have been Tony. Good advice, guitar is more work, not fun in my case. Oh, we don't want it to just be work. We want it to be fun. Good advice, guitar is more work, not fun in my case. I would love to help you fix that, my friend. I don't want you to feel that way. Don't confuse work with there's a lot of stuff you have to get good at playing. That's why I call it go into the sandbox. Sandbox should be fun. There are times when you have to work a little harder to get certain things done, but that's cool. We do that every day in life. So what's the difference? It's no big deal. It doesn't always have to be a balloon party. So you have to feel the music to come out. Yes, okay. What's missing with tabs? Good, thank you. So the very first thing is this pulse. Now I'm going to switch screens and I want to pull up an image that I use a lot. And tell me if you see the image right now. Get my face out of the way here. It might take a moment to come up because there's always a bit of a delay here. Just let me know. I know you're probably seeing it quicker. It just takes time to get back. There it is. Just popped up. Does everybody see that image? If it's on my screen, it's got to be on yours. Okay, I'm assuming Tony says, yep, we're good. Okay, cool. That's not the right one, actually. Hold on. I'm going to close that one down. Same kind of image, though. There it is. Here's what I want you to do in a practical sense when you are learning about rhythm and timing. By the way, I often use the terms interchangeably, as many musicians do. Rhythm to me is the word that defines how sounds relate to one another in terms of how long they last. Timing is kind of how accurate you are at those sounds. That's how I sort of think about it. But they're bound up together. They're not two separate ideas. So if I took that song and I'm listening to it and I'm doing this, I'm just enjoying the piece of music. Wherever I perceive that pulse, you can see it in my tapping foot, or maybe you can see it in my moving body. The blue arrows in this image that you see are pointing down. Notice that they're pointing down toward a foot, and that foot is flat on the floor. Notice when I raise my leg, that the foot is up. So the feet that you see there are going tap, up, tap, up, tap, up. They're doing that. I would encourage you to cultivate this ability, if you don't do it, to get this tapping business going on. Most people think when they see musicians do this, they're doing it just because it's a fun tune and they're into it, they're having a great time. Yes, that's true. But they're also using this information as a measuring tool to know how other stuff they can potentially do will relate back to this. If you do not have some kind of a reference to how music is unfolding, then you can't do anything. You have to have a reference. If I said, something like, how much does something cost? And you said 23. Well, 23 what? Dollars, US dollars, Canadian dollars, 23 yen, 23 euros, I don't know. I have to have a reference point. Your reference point is this pulse. And yet, this is the key feature. This is one thing I really want you to walk away with. Most people who do this when they're at a dance or listening to music, just sitting down, having a nice time, they're doing this and it's just wired into them. But they're not using it as a musical tool. The guitarists in us should be thinking much more about how important this is as a starting point. Okay. So let's pretend I've got this pulse going on with my tune that I played for you, and I'm liking it. That image, with regards to what your strumming hand does, is to tell you, let me get rid of an echo here, is to tell you on those down blue strums, hit the strings of your guitar, and we don't need any chords. We can use chords, but that just confuses the issue for now. Hit the strings with your tapping foot. 1, 2, 3. It's not interesting, but it's important to be able to do it. Let me see if I can do it along with, no, I'm going to do it along with my metronome here. It'll be more clear. I'm going to bring the metronome up here. I'll pull this down to around 60. So this is mimicking, this sound, oh, that was pretty close, is mimicking the tapping foot. My tapping foot and the sound of this, you don't even need to look at it. Don't look at anything. It's just what you hear. Click, 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 click. Here I go. That's what that image is telling you to do. Listen carefully. If I'm doing this well, the metronome and my strumming hand should sound like they're just one sound, as opposed to this. Right? That's very different. That's bad timing. I'll put a chord to it. This is bad timing. If you experience that on a simple down strum that reflects the pulse of the song, then you need to accept that you might have to go back a few steps and begin another realm of training with regard to your guitar to help build up your rhythm skills. Now notice, some of you are probably thinking, oh, I thought he was just going to show us a bunch of strum patterns that we can learn. I am not of the opinion that giving people strum patterns and say, use this pattern for that song, and you can do that, but only at the beginning when you're learning to play the instrument. Most of you are here, you've already had some experience on guitar. You're not all-out beginners by any stretch. So once you've been on the instrument for a while, I start to move away from that approach, because that's like having training wheels on your bike. It only looks like you're riding a bike when you have training wheels on. You're not. You're not feeling any of the forces you're supposed to feel to ride a bike properly. Same when you're using a strum pattern that says go down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, down. You are not feeling the things I'm asking you to feel through this approach. You're just a robot. You're being told to duh. And it works, trust me. I mean, it gets things going. I'm not saying there's no use for it. I'm just saying people stay with it too long. At some point, you've got to abandon that, raise your bar, and start to become a bit more self-sufficient with your ability to hear a piece of music and then relatively quickly construct a way of strumming it that reflects the song very well. This is step one. That's why I call it Basic Strumming Mechanism 1. It is not a strumming pattern. It's a framework that you need to perceive. If I were hearing a faster song, let's say, I'll just make it up because YouTube won't like me. How about if I did, I don't know, something like that. Something quicker like that, then this becomes that pattern, Basic Strumming Mechanism 1, is your perception of the pulse of a piece of music. And it means you have to think a bit, as you should, because musicians are very smart people. We are a smart crowd of people. We know how to do this. It doesn't matter that this might be new for you. You can do this. This has to happen first. And you got to get used to zeroing into any piece you hear on the radio, at home, when you find yourself tapping along to it, just don't say, oh, I'm having a good time. Yes, you are. But you're also using this now as a measuring tool. Think of it as a measuring tape that a carpenter might use to build a table. If the accuracy of your ability to hit those taps on your guitar, if that's off, that means, like the carpenter using the tape, that their measurement wasn't correct. And that means when they cut the legs for the table, it's going to be wobbly. We're looking for comfort and evenness with this. How do you get that, Steve? That's what I would like. You got to do it. And you've got to keep doing it. It's got to become the way you perceive music. Even if you're listening to Sweet Home Alabama, right? Or, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some tunes here. London calling, dun ba dun dun dun, London dun 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 ba dun dun. Okay? Even if you can do that, you are so close to being able to play just about anything you want. But if you don't practice being accurate with it, whether using a song or boring metronomes or whatever, you can't just rely completely, most times, on just your internal ability to do it. Most people have a very rough sense of timing when they begin this process. It gets refined as you play more and more and more. And I'm going to bet, in your experience of learning guitar, this discussion that I'm having with you has never been had with you. This discussion that I'm having with you is this is not a sale. I'm just letting you know. That's why I created Guitar Strumming OS. It focuses specifically on this process. So in case you wanted to go in more depth, you could check the course out. But, and of course it's at a crazy low price right now because of reasons I spoke of earlier. Keep moving my head in front of the image. Okay. If you look carefully at this, I'm going to go back here. I want to see, are people talking to me? This is what's missing. Yes, bitch. Yes, 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 yes. Came up right way, Tony. I start doing it after a while, my foot ache. Okay, with regards to the physical ability, yeah, foot aches. Either you're slamming your foot too hard, or you need to go to the gym and strengthen up your muscles. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm doing this so that you can see it and you can hear it. It's probably coming through on the mic. This is not what I'm doing when I'm just working on my own. I might be just barely lifting the heel of my foot up and down. The ball of my foot just stays on the floor. You can see my lap is barely moving, but it is. I'm not doing this because it does hurt after a while, so don't do it. I'm just, my heel is coming up. Boop, boop, very slightly. I don't usually raise my toes because that makes the front shin of my leg get tired. But just a little bit lifting the heel, I could do that all night. There's no problem. And there's no effort to it. It's just a relaxed lift and drop. Let gravity drop it down again, and away you go. So we don't need you to get injured in the process, Tony. Yeah, making it look easy just comes from doing it a long time. That's it. There's nothing special going on here. Remember, I started guitar when I was 9. I'm 57. So I've been doing it a long time. And of all those years, I've been teaching for almost 30 of them. So I know that these things can appear to be like very far removed. And I'm not at all suggesting it takes all that time to get what you're seeing. It happens insidiously. Foot tapping, not using my leg. Sorry, I mean foot tapping, not using my leg. My foot taps, my leg always moves. Am I missing something, Tony? When my foot taps, either my heel or my foot or the whole foot, my whole leg moves. Just clarify that for me. What was I going to say? Yes. These are not features that take years and years to develop. This can all come together for you in as short as, let's say, 90 days. I'm not kidding. It's just new. And yeah, I'm making it look easy because I've just been doing it a long time. Anything you guys do, whatever you do for a living, if I watched you do it, I'd say exactly the same thing. My gosh, you just make it look so easy. And my brain's going, that's not easy. But you would say the same thing. I've been at it for a long time, or I trained a lot for it, or whatever. There's nothing going on here that is hard to accomplish. Okay. No, I don't want that. Go away. I want to come back here. I'm going to and I want to point out something just before I leave this image. I hope everyone can stick around. This one is going to go till about 6:30, for sure. Notice that the arrows that are colored in are the points that you're hitting the strings. You might be wondering about those hollow arrows. Arrows. They're not errors. Arrows coming up when my foot is up. But I'm not hitting the strings, am I? I'm choosing not to. So I'm just slightly pulling my hand away from the strings so I don't hit them on the way up. That's what that image represents. Miss, play, miss, play, miss. And there's a name, there's a way we count this as musicians so that we have a structure for it. Just like framers have for a house. They, if they're building wood houses, they put their studs at 16 inches on center. There's a structure to it. And they say it like that when they talk to each other. Yeah, man, that's got to be 16 on center. 16. They know that it means 16 inches on center. They don't have to say that. And everybody knows it, so when they're building the house, they know how to do it. So same thing. Okay, get myself over here again. Okay. So the way we count this as a structure that I would recommend you have in your mind is that the downward motion of your hand, representing the tap of your foot, which represents the pulse you perceive in the music. Let me say that again. The strumming that you're doing is mimicking the tap that you're doing. The tap is representing the pulse that you mysteriously perceive going on in the music. But everybody can do it. They're not refined at it necessarily, but they can feel it coming out of the music. Some music emphasizes that quality more than others. That's true. But here it is. But notice that when my hand comes up, I miss the strings, but I have to come up in order to hit them down again. And the only reason why those little hollow arrows are short is because when you do an upstroke, if you hit the strings, when you do an upstroke, you're only hitting maybe the top 2 or 3 strings. You're not trying to hit all the 6 strings that you did going down, or whatever number of strings you did hit when you go down. You're not trying to hit the same amount coming up. It's just not the nature of the guitar to do that. That's why the arrows are shorter in the middle. So you hit whatever you hit. Let's say it's a big honkin' G chord. If I play down, I get all 6 strings. When I strum up, I'm lucky if I get 2 or 3 of them. I hope that makes sense. You don't have to do this. That's not cool strumming. This is cooler. And I can tell you right now, I'm almost confident I'm only getting the top 2 strings when my hand comes up. You can hit as many as you like, but when you hit the same number you did going down, it sounds not right. It's just the quality of the guitar, so just don't do it. Okay, I'm going to leave this image, but just notice that when your hand goes down, your foot is going down. When your hand comes up, your foot is going up. That's why this tapping behavior is a good measurement tool of what your ears are hearing in the music. Again, I've told you this a few times. Sorry, I mean my foot. No, I'm missing something. Don't worry. Yeah, retirement is difficult. Tony, we should get together. Another light bulb. Good man. I like to hear that there's some light bulbs on. Let's see here. Let me go back. Okay. Okay? So your awareness that these two things are, see that? I'm exaggerating. Up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up. Key. So important because number one, you're putting rhythm into your body by physically moving with what you're playing. Of course, your strumming hand is moving. I'm sorry I'm not looking at the camera so much. I'm watching the image quite a bit here. And to recognize that they're almost like they're connected by a string. Okay? That's important to recognize. But let's go on. Let's kill that one. And put this one up. Now this is the exact same thing where billions of songs could be played, but not that as a strum pattern. That could be a strum pattern, but I'm not treating it as that. Folks, what I'm doing is treating that as a template, a starting point. And if you notice, this is the exact same image as the previous one, but now the in-between arrows, the up strokes, are colored in, which means you're hitting everything. When you hit these things, you say to yourself, if you can, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Why? Even though I might be the first person to be telling you to do this, there I am again, out of alignment. Go, Jesus, man, you got so many things asking us to do. How are we supposed to keep this in play? You know that walking is a pretty complex activity, but you've long since forgotten that it is. When you first started to walk, you were falling all over the place. Most of you were anyway. And fortunately, somebody was probably there to catch you before you hit the ground. Because walking, from a physics point of view, is very complicated. Basically, all you're doing when you walk is you're constantly falling forward. And if you don't throw that next footstep in front of you to prevent that fall from happening, you're falling. So there's a coordination that goes on there that took some time for you to learn. Didn't come overnight. So humans are wired to be able to make what appear to be complex things. I'm patting my head, rubbing my belly, and tapping my foot. And eventually knit them together so that they feel easy. So you have to be patient with the process. And if you're having trouble with it, that just means that's an area of physical guitar playing you haven't worked on. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you lack the ability, it just means you haven't done it. If I go into a jiu-jitsu club and want to start that, I'm going to feel like an idiot. I'm going to feel like a clumsy person trying to learn to do it. Give me 3 years at it and I'll probably be pretty good. Give me 6 months and I'll walk in and I'll feel, yeah, I can do this. And I'll continue to grow, and that's the way it is. That's true of any craft. Don't knock yourself out of the arena before you've even given yourself a chance. So that image is telling you to do this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Let me know if this stuff is making sense to you, because I am doing a lot of talking and I don't want it to go over your head too quickly. I want to make sure it just works. Now, if we accept that that image is a good starting point for a tune, here's what's possible from that one image. And here's how I talk about it. As a musician, if I sat next to you with your guitar and I said, here, I'm going to pick on somebody here. Let's go to Mike. Is Mike still here? I hope he is. Are you still here, Mike? It doesn't matter. If you're here, here's what I'd say to you. Call you the cat. Here's what I'd say. Hey, Mike, what I want you to do is on the and of beat 2, I don't want you to strum, but you can strum everything else out of these 4 beats. The beats are the numbers or the pulses, but we talk about beats. We get this silly language going on in music where we bounce back and forth, and eventually people know what you mean. Okay, so we've got the pulses happening on the numbers. That's when your foot is tapping down. And when your foot is coming up with your hand, that's considered the and or the backbeat. The downbeat or the backbeat. And your awareness of those two things. And here's an important point. The backbeat happens precisely halfway between two downbeats. You don't tend to see people play that image like this. They go 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. They don't do that. Any more than if I said to any of you right now, I would like you to count from 1 to 10. You go, okay, Mike, you're still here. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Without even thinking about it. You're rhythmical. What you didn't do is you didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You didn't do that. It's inherent in you to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. You count that way. This is what we're kind of doing here. You could say in that image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with all the activity of the hand, but the way musically we say it is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And I could talk a lot about that, but for the sake of tonight, that's that. Now here's the thing. Hey Mike, I would like you to play that image, but do not play on the and of beat 2. Now, can you imagine as you're thinking, as you're looking at the image, can you imagine in your mind's ear what that might sound like? Could you fake it on your guitar before you put any chords to it? Here's what it does sound like without any chords. And I'm sitting a bit back from the mic here. Hope you can hear me better here. So I don't want to play the upstroke. That's the and, the little plus sign. I don't want to play that stroke. I'm going to miss it altogether, but I am still going to move my hand in the direction of it as if I were going to hit it. That is our measuring tool as we learn to strum. That the essence of what you're doing for the majority, and I mean like 95+% of the time, your hand is just doing this. The strum patterns that you're so enamored by are just combinations of what you choose to hit and miss. And I've just given you one, Mike. I'm just picking on you, man. So it would sound like this. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Okay, it's not an interesting strum pattern. Here it is with chords. I'll put some chords to it. Change. Change. And 3 and 4. Change. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Change. Boom. What if I said, hey, Mike, how about you eliminate the and of beat 2 and the and of beat 4? I mean, I'm just pulling these things out randomly. Oh, man, that's hard. Yeah, it might be at first, but you tease your way through it. You go, okay, it's 1 and 2, and then I miss. 3 and 4, and then I miss. 1 and 2, miss. 3 and 4, miss. Oh, and as soon as you maybe speed it up a bit, you start to go, oh, it's this. It's that thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Get the idea? My point here is that with this image alone, there are so many combinations and permutations of what you could hit, what you could miss, not even talking about accenting stuff or muting stuff. Creating those muted ghost strums. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Haven't even talked about that. Haven't even talked about accenting. All of that creates a myriad of possible rhythmic possibilities that you are completely capable of creating on your own. Your job in the big scheme of things will be, when you're listening to a song, to make some interpretations from it about what you think you could eliminate from the image that in a sense mimics the vibe of the tune. That's a mouthful, I know that. This way, what you're not doing is just sticking a strum pattern that your hand is used to doing, because you've been doing it for 10 years, on top of the song and hoping that it's going to work. When in fact the strum pattern you choose doesn't really reflect we'll call it the emotion of the song. I call it the vibe, right? So, you know, if I played, no, I see I can't do that on YouTube. This is the problem. Can't use demonstrations. This is not a good thing. Get the course. We go over 3 songs where I walk you through this whole process. But and by the way, it doesn't stop there. It goes there. That looks scary, but it's this. 1, 2, 3, 4. You combine this one, Basic Mechanism 3, with Basic Mechanism 2, and really all of them are captured in number 3, but I like to separate them out. You could be playing stuff like this. And that might be precisely what the song needs that you're listening to, instead of your go-to strum pattern, which was... That might have fit the first song you ever learned, that kind of swing thing. That might have worked perfectly, but it might not fit the next song. So that's where the ear comes into play. So that's why the course, this is not, trust me, I'm not selling this to you. That's why the course is called Strumming, Guitar Strumming OS. OS referring to operating system. You need to change your operating system with regards to how strumming works, because I can almost guarantee the majority of you either have tried to figure it out on your own, or you've had friends or family show you a pattern or two for a certain tune, and you got really good at that pattern and for that song, and then the next song came along and you thought, well, I'll try the same pattern. But, you know, that's like thinking that you're going to use the same coat in all types of weather. You have to match the coat to the nature of the weather in order to be comfortable, to suit the nature of the weather. You have to match the strumming behavior to match the song. It's the same kind of idea. Hope that makes sense. I'm not going to go into this one in depth because that'll take us too long. Perhaps if you guys want, I could start Monday's session with going into depth and trying out some of these more. But the main one is, where are you? That one. That simple one of just going up and down. Metronome is going. Oop. I've got my foot going with it. 1 and 2 and 3 and I do recommend learning to do a lot of strumming without chords. That's just too much for the brain to handle. That's rhythm. You got to play. There's your sandbox again, guys. Okay, I'm going to end that here for now. I think really my goal tonight was to give you a bit of an orientation. Yeah, 16th notes. You got it, man. Is that... can you change the note? I'm just going to read some things here and see if this is okay, Mike. That's okay, Mike. This is this right from your BMS strumming. Yeah, these images, if that's what you're referring to, Mike, these images, I go, of course, much more in depth, analyzing them, breaking them down in the course. We go through each of the three. First, I give you a long blurb in the e-manual. There's a 50-page e-manual in here, which is how the course actually started. It was just an e-manual, and then I added the video content because I thought people need to see me do it. And I discuss at length all of the things you need to be thinking about in order to work with these images. And then within the manual, there's like 33 training exercises where we systematically break apart each of these images to come up with different strum patterns that you would never think about in your own time at home on a Saturday morning. You're just going to default to what you know, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's what you know. But if I can show you a different angle on how to learn this stuff and present to you a whole other world of possibility as to how you could do it, that would allow you to grow without having to wait for somebody to show you how to strum everything you want to do, that'd be cool, don't you think? So and those images come from the course, yeah, for sure. So I'm happy to entertain any questions if you have anything specific right now. Because, I'd go on all night if you wanted me to, but I know you don't want me to. Let me read some stuff here. So, yes, Mike, right from the course. Can you change notes, use, and on beat to give you more time to get to the next chord? Can you change, not use the... Yes, I know what you're saying, Tony. I talk about that. I don't miss it, man. It's in the course. I'll show you the image very briefly. What Tony's asking is, you see, I can't put a cursor up here, but if you see the and of beat 4, that little short arrow at the very far right-hand side of the image when you're looking at your screen. A lot of people will miss that one. They'll just eliminate it from hitting because if you think about it, if you don't hit it, it actually gives your right hand, your fretting hand, I should say, a little extra time to get on to the next chord. So there's value in that. It would be still good to train your hand to be able to get to the next chord even though you were committed to that last up strum. It means that the fingers here, they've got to get to that chord real quick. It's a really good point. I would rather people be able to do both than treat it as a technical deficiency, and so therefore you're just going to miss the last beat because you just can't do it. I would get rid of that deficiency and use it when you want to and don't use it when you don't want to, is how I like to look at things. So that's how I would treat that, Tony. And the last one, yes, were 16th note rhythms. We're not going to get into it tonight, but yes. The metronome was basically set at 60. A healthy heartbeat, right? 60-ish. So maybe that's a bit slow. A resting heartbeat, let's say. So... And by the way, everything I'm talking about in these images, although I've applied it to strumming, I'm going to keep that going for a sec, drive you nuts. It applies to all your lick playing too. Rhythm is rhythm. It's not just a strumming thing, it's this thing. Everything is rhythm. You get this good, you're going to play good. Even if your chords sound a bit sloppy, or you get what we call a clam note, you know, you're playing, and you just get a really bad sound on a note. People think if your rhythm is tight, that you can play. If your rhythm is not tight, you can't play, even if your sounds are pristine. If your chords sound gorgeous and the notes sound great, but your timing is off. If I play... Let's just pretend you think that's the most awesome thing you've ever heard, and it was played well. If I play it like this... You know, the order of the notes and stuff like that was kind of in the right order, but the rhythm was off. You know, not good. So getting the rhythm right... Sorry. Even if I get a bad note in there, if I hit the bad note at the right time, it still sounds good. That's my point. So working on rhythm skills is real critical. That's it. I just played something I shouldn't have played. Let's hope the robots don't pick up on it. I would love to be able to sit here and just demo stuff. I don't know how other people's channels do it. Maybe some of you can let me know. They must get copyright claims and they just accept it and they just move forward. I don't know how that works. So best information I've been told is just don't play copyrighted material when you're live or doing video. Just play your own stuff. So there you go. Any more questions? Quarter note. What's a quarter note? I'll show it to you very briefly here. Let me go back. Think of it this way. Visualize the length of an inch in your mind on a ruler or something, and think of that as 1. It's 1 inch, just 1. And then you've got the quarter inch notches on it, and how many are in 1? There are 4 of them in 1. Okay? So let me go back here, get rid of this. This whole image is 1. And the colored blue downstrokes are the quarter note or the quarter mark-offs within the inch. That's why we call, when you're hitting the guitar at these locations, which generally represent the pulse of the tune, that's why the pulse is so important. In general, we assign the quarter note value to that. It works for our purpose a lot of the time. Everything in with regards to rhythm is relative. That may not mean anything to you right now, but if we have the opportunity together to work on rhythm, it will become clear. So that's what a quarter note is in terms of just how it sounds. I mean, this by itself, you don't know what it is unless I give you some more information. This could be slow eighth notes. This could be really slow 16th notes. Or it could be quarter notes. Or they could be fast whole notes. You don't know. You need to be told ahead of time based on the pulse of the tune. This is why this is so important. Those are the quarter notes. These would be eighth notes, because there's 8 of them in one of those images. 16th notes. You'll notice for every quarter note, I do 1 strum. For every 8th note, I do 2 strums, because those are 2 eighth notes. It's just like cutting a pizza in half. Here's the pizza. 1 strum is a pizza. Cut it in half. I get 2 halves within the same size of the original pizza, so I can hit the guitar 2 times in the time that I did 1, or I could hit it 4 times in the time that I did 1. I could cut the pizza into quarters. So very briefly, that's what that is. Cool. Hey, don't you use the metric system? Yeah, you know what? In Britain, and Tony might be able to let us know about this, I believe the quarter note is called a quaver. I believe. The eighth note is called a semiquaver. The quarter note is, I think, semiquaver. They have different names for these things, right? Time signature, not specifically. That's not referencing the time signature, but everything in music is connected, right, Tony? So, yes, there is reference to that in terms of time signatures. It's also in the course as well. I do sound like I'm selling it. I truly am not. I would rather you be aware of it. I'd love it if you just go and check it out. Know that it's there, and at some point down the road, you may feel, yeah, I think maybe now's the time that would be useful for me. I'm not telling you to go and buy it. I'm just saying it's my job as a business person to let you know this is what I have to offer. And there it is. And cool. Are you guys okay with what we covered this evening? Was it different than what you expected? And is there any other aspect maybe that you would prefer that I focus on so that I can consider that for when we do Monday's session? Let me know in the chat. I'll just hang here for a bit. Other than that, we'll call it quits. And go and play in our sandboxes. Mike says it's a good course. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that feedback. It's a biggie. It took too long to put it together, to be honest, but according to the way most people do things. But yes, but I use your system. It's easier. My granddaughter only knows quavers. Yeah, I suppose she would. She's, I'm assuming, has grown up in the UK, so I don't know. But it's not metric. It's just it's probably Old English or something, I think. I don't know where it comes from. But yeah, we're an imperial system in music, eighth notes, quarter notes. They could have been called anything, to be honest. We just draw on something that makes sense and we use it. There's no magic about it. All right, guys, I think we'll call it there. I'm hungry. Some of you are getting tired. Time to go to sleep. We'll shut it down. Thank you so much again for hanging out with me. I know it's long. It's hard to sit for, in this case, an hour and a half. If you need it shorter, I'm happy to oblige. That's just a sort of a general sense of what I think it would take to pull one of these off relatively well. And on Monday, if you have any ideas that you'd like me to touch on, feel free to leave them in the chat. Even after, you can go in here and do that, and or comment below on the video when it's up. I'll read those for sure. You can email me, Stephen@dempsterguitarstudio.com. Now, bars and measures are interchangeable, Tony. People do here call them either bars or measures. You don't get the claim on that. Sorry, man. I myself use bars and measures back and forth. So, there you go. So, there we are. We've done another session. I hope these are working for you. I do enjoy putting them together, and I love your feedback on them. If you feel others can benefit from the session, just reference the video to them on YouTube and love, like, and share these things all around, whatever people do on the interwebs these days. And until then, Steve Dempster at Dempster Guitar Studio. I'll see you guys hopefully again on Monday. Stay well over the weekend. COVID is with us for a little bit yet, but we are going to get past this if we all play our parts together. See? Musical reference right there. I'll see you on Monday, guys. Take care.